How's it going, guys? Marshall with Hiner Outdoor Living, and today we are going to go over the best practices on how to track an issue with a leak inside your water feature. Very similar process when it comes to ponds and pondlesses. So the first step in determining if and where your water feature leak is to figure out if you actually have a leak. It is not uncommon for water features to lose 1 to 3 inches a week, and sometimes in the heat of the summer you can lose upwards to 4 to 5 inches a week. So if your water feature is losing approximately 1 to 3 inches a week, there might not be an issue. It might just be evaporation. If you have a small pond with a really long stream that pushes a lot of flow and has some splash, your water feature is going to experience more water loss through evaporation than a larger pond with a shorter stream and a pump that's not pushing as much water, creating less evaporation and water loss. But if you are losing quite a bit of water, this is the first step. And here's a hint: most of the times it is not a hole in the liner. It tends to be in the waterfalls and the streams themselves. Typically what happens over time is the ground settles, takes that liner, pulls it down to where that water level is above that liner, and that water is going over the edge of the liner. Some things that you also want to take into consideration: are there any objects or obstructions in the streams or waterfalls? So this goes from leaves, sticks, anything that will dam that water feature up, possibly aquatic plants that have grown in over time, diverting that water over the liner, or possibly growing over that liner, getting into the terrestrial dirt and pulling that liner down. So you definitely want to inspect all of the areas where there's vegetation and all the edges, especially where there's waterfalls. A lot of the times where we find issues with low edges and leaks in the stream themselves is by that waterfall area where you start having that elevation drop. Let me go ahead and explain a little bit with our water features here about what I'm talking about. All right, so here is a water feature, and what we are looking for are areas like this. This is a little bit of a wet spot right here. This may or may not be an issue, especially with mulch. It could be what is called wicking, where the water from the pond is wicking, absorbing up through that mulch, making it look like a wet spot. But nevertheless, it's always good to pull the mulch back and to check if you have a low edge. As you can see here, there is no low edge, but there is water within that liner that is making this mulch wet, but not a low edge right here. So you can see that as you pull this back, that water level is okay. Right here in this particular area, there's not an issue with water loss. Okay, so here is an area that we really want to focus on. It's where you have the water level coming up here, dropping down. How these water features are constructed is that there's the liner that goes around here. A lot of the times the issues with the low edge can be found around these waterfall areas. So it's good to pull back this water to see if there's an issue with a low edge. As you can see here, we're looking okay, but this comes to the third thing to really keep an eye out for, and that's aquatic plants. Right here we have a variety of aquatic plants in this water feature, and this particular situation here seems to be an issue because we have the aquatic plants coming in and it's starting to root itself up and over, turning it into terrestrial plants. And as you can see right here, this did create a low edge, and there is water coming up and over this liner. So as you can see, this plant grew up and over, and this is what the low edge is doing. It's taking this water and diverting it over that liner. So what we're gonna wanna do is clean up this area a little bit of the aquatic plants. Pull this liner up. And then backfill. keeping that liner above that water level. And then you can come back, fill it in with the rock, bring that mulch up and over. And that is an example of how to fix a low edge. One thing to always keep in mind when you're looking for a low edge is check the folds of the liner. Sometimes you may at first glance look like you don't have a low edge, but you have a bad fold, which is taking that liner in and then out another way. So sometimes if you're having a hard time really finding that issue and you know it's in the edge, then it's good to pull all of that liner up and expose it just to make sure that you don't have any poor folds within the liner. All right, so step 2, once you've checked the low edges and you can't find any issues, the next step is to shut off your water features pump. This is gonna help diagnose and test a couple things. One is the issue in the pond itself. If that pump is off and the water level does not drop at all, then that means the water feature leak issue is gonna be either in the waterfalls themselves or possibly the pipe. But if that water level starts dropping over time, and you always want to shut the water feature off for approximately 12 to 24 hours before revisiting, just to see how much that water level has dropped. So for the first scenario, say that water level is dropping within the water feature, we want to wait until that water level stops dropping completely before we start to try to figure out where the issue is. When the water level is dropping in the pond, it is going to typically be right near the skimmer box. And what will happen is that skimmer has a silicone seal on it. And over time, that seal can fail and that water level can go in and behind that skimmer box. And what will happen is if that lower entry level of that weir is here on that skimmer, that water level will drop just below the opening of that skimmer box. A way to actually test and confirm that there's issues with that skimmer and that seal leaking is by digging out behind that skimmer, reaching your hand out to see if that water level is saturated or not. If that water level is wet, then we know we need to at least seal the skimmer and see if that fixes the issue of the leak in the water feature. Very similar to a skimmer seal, the biofalls where the water feature starts could be an issue as well. You're gonna go through the same procedure as the skimmer to dig behind the biofalls to see if there's gonna be an issue within the broken seal of the biofalls. Here's the other scenario of what will happen if that water level continues to drop in that pond, possibly below that skimmer. What you're gonna wanna do is just continue to wait until that water level drops. And when it stops dropping, then that's when you kind of have an idea of where there might be the issue. And really the only way to figure it out at this point is to physically remove the rocks, try to find a hole in the liner and repair it with an EPDM liner patch kit. So scenario 2, say you shut your pump off and after 24 hours, you do not lose any water in the pond. That's good news. That means the issue is not in the pond itself, but we have to revisit the stream to figure out what's going on with the water feature, whether it's in the pipe or whether it's in the falls themselves. And a lot of times you might have a longer stream. Well, there's ways to help narrow down where that issue might be by getting an external pump and starting it at the top of the waterfalls itself. You always want to start it from the basin up to the top. If you have that pump at the bottom and run it all the way to the top of the waterfall and run it and there are no issues or leaks, then that is going to determine the issue is going to be within the piping itself. If you have that pump running with an external pipe up to the top and it's still leaking, then that means it's most likely not in the pipe, but within the stream itself. And what you can do is at that point, you can take that pipe from the basin of the water and start it at the lower level of your stream. This is when it starts to become a process of a couple days. You're gonna run it at that bottom of the stream for approximately 24 hours and see if you're losing any water. If you are, then that means that leak is gonna be in that bottom stream area. If not, you're gonna move that pipe up 5 to 10 feet or wherever it makes sense within your water feature, possibly right before the next falls, and then test it up there. And you will continue to work your way up the stream until you can narrow where that water feature issue is. Always, always double check to make sure that there is no low edge in that stream before you start the next step, which is gonna be removing all the rocks to try to find a hole and to physically patch the liner itself. When it comes to fixing and repairing water features, there are some services we provide, but there are also services we don't. A service that we do not provide is sending a guy out to try to find and fix a leak. We have unfortunately had to stop doing that procedure and shift to just coaching and guiding you on how to fix it itself. The main reason is because we have time and time again sent people out to the clients' homes and wasted money, wasted the client's time, and we're not able to fix any issues. In order for us to come out and help you, we need to make sure and guarantee that the issue at hand is gonna be fixed. Whether the issue is in the stream and you're unable to get it figured out and fixed, then that might consider and justify a rebuild of the stream. We'd be happy to talk with you and what that would look like in order to rebuild the stream or possibly the water feature itself. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching, and if you could, please give us a like, give us a follow, and we'll see you on the next one.